Mark, the new show, 100 Acts of Dissent in a year, began May 13th, 2013. So by my reckoning, you have less than 2 months to go. What number are you up to?
I'm up to 78.
78.
So by the end of the month, we're going to be in the low 80s, which will give us about 6 weeks to do 18 acts.
All right. Have you got them planned out? Or?
No, not entirely.
All right. So
one of them, you see, one of them we did have planned out, and now they've, because it's illegal in Britain to handle a salmon suspiciously. So I thought, well, that's an easy one to do, isn't it? All I've got to do is turn up outside Parliament with a cape and a wax moustache and a salmon stroking it, going, "Run, my lovely." And of course, I've broken the law. But they're now repealing that law, so we've got to think of another one.
All right, okay. You have to do something illegal with the salmon.
Well, we have done. I mean, there's, you know, because Britain, as you know, you spend a lot of time in, and you know, there's just sort of, we've just got all those laws that hang over from whenever when.
Yeah.
And one of them the other day, it's illegal under the 1848 Treasonous Felony Act to imagine an end to the monarchy. Right? So I'm breaking the law right now. Okay.
When did they write that law, Mark?
1848.
Right.
Right. And it's still on the statute books.
Read people's minds. Obviously.
Well, they could read people's minds back then. Yes.
So
well, even now, I think on occasion they say they can, but they tend to be sort of rendition cases in Guantanamo and all of that.
Of course, they tell you what's in your
mind.
mind.
You've been thinking this, haven't you? So that one, we applied for permission to have a procession to imagine thinking of the end of the monarchy down the Mall. And I wrote to the Royal Parks and said, there's going to be no banners, no chanting, no shouts, no slogan. We're just going to walk down the pavement imagining an end to the monarchy. Can we have permission for the procession? And they said no.
They did now.
They did. It's illegal to walk down the street thinking at the end of the monarchy.
That is fantastic.
That kind of stuff writes itself for you, you know.
But like as a group, but can you do it as one person even imagine it?
Well, then it wouldn't be a procession.
All right, I see. That's fantastic. So, like, it's called like minor acts of dissent. Is it in any way a guide for people who want to dissent and don't have the time to go to prison?
Well, actually, I think it is. It's about geeing people up. I want people to do things. I think the worst crime that we commit as human beings is not realising the power that we have. And I know that sounds dreadfully like some self-help video. But, you know, I want... the stuff that we've done has been really quite amazing, because some of the acts have been very small and they've been like putting stickers on books. Some of them is... We've got 4 court cases running at the moment, which is me taking other people to court. I'm taking the police to court, backed by the National Union of Journalists, over data collection, over journalists. It's going to be great.
So that would be one of the sort of more ambitious acts.
That's one of the more ambitious acts, yeah.
Right,
we've got another one where we're challenging the Royal Parks decisions to charge to play sport. 1 year after the Olympics, they're charging to play sport in Hyde Park, which is nuts. So all sorts of little bits and bobs like that. So it can be used in court action.
Can you just, I'll just interject there, if you take me through, just give me 2 examples. Give me an example of sort of a mild act of dissent, and then maybe talk me through the police one, because I find that very...
Okay, well, a mild act. Like at the moment, I'm trying to get banned from Tesco's, right? Because I thought... I want the local high street to thrive with local businesses. I really like local businesses. And economically, it's great, because every pound you spend, 90p stays in the area. You spend £1 in the supermarket, 90p leaves. So it's really good for that kind of, for local communities. I go nuts over these big supermarkets. And so I thought, but the trouble is they're quite convenient. So I thought, what I'll do then is I'll ask them to ban me and withdraw their convenience. Right, so I've been having this, trying to get banned. I've got a petition going. We've got, I go to stores and ask to get banned. What I do is I write it in marker pen in the oranges, so it's display. You can walk in. It was great. This bloke, I said to a bloke the other day, I want to be banned, and he said, I can't ban you. I can't, but you've done nothing wrong. I said, what about this? And took him round to the fruit and veggies. He's got "ban me" written on the oranges with these flags.
Well, he's probably just laughing.
He did.
Right.
So now we've got to up the ante. And we're going to begin a movement called Occupy Tesco to get banned. So that's one of the small ones.
So how far will you take that?
Well, we've got tents.
For in Tesco?
Yeah, we're going to occupy Tesco's in an attempt to get banned.
I guess if you're going to occupy anywhere, it's quite a handy place.
Well,
you can keep going forever.
It's always near the shops, yeah.
And then an example of sort of the more extreme dissent.
Well, the
police one.
The police one was I am registered, according to the police, I am what is classified as a domestic extremist. I'm one of 9,000 people odd in this country who are domestic extremists. It gives the police a right to put us under surveillance and to create database files on us. And so I challenge that.
Can I just interject there? It gives them the right to sort of put you under surveillance. Yeah. Nobody has the right in Britain not to be under surveillance, from what I can tell.
Well, there is, but this is about the police actually monitoring political activity, journalism, book launches and readings that I've done, and compiling files and data on it. And the question is, who's collecting? On whose behalf are they collecting? Why are they collecting it? And who has access to it? And there's a whole... I'm occasionally involved in journalism, and what's interesting is they've been monitoring my journalistic activity. I know this because I put in a data protection request, which they have to give you part of the information over. And so I went to the National Union of Journalists and said, this is what they're doing to me. I think we can challenge it. And they said, great, let's find other journalists. So we've been getting other journalists to apply for their information. Okay. And we're beginning to find that there's quite a pattern amongst journalists who challenge the narrative that the police put forward at events, between people who challenge the corporate version of events. And there's quite a pattern of documenting them and their activity. So we're mounting a legal challenge to that.
Right, that's actually quite sinister.
Yes, I think it is. But it's also couched in extremely funny stuff, because they're, you know, here they are, this surveillance network. But at one point, they've actually got this bit where they're looking. I was speaking at an anti-war rally, and it's got 14, 30 hours, we spot Mr. Thomas, a comedian, on a mountain bike, silver with yellow forks. He enters the square wearing a rider's bib. He said hello to us as he passed and seemed very happy. You just think, money well spent, boys.
That's like the lives of others. Did you ever see that?
Yes, I
used
did.
To imagine guys just monitoring you.
But it is, that is quite sinister. And so there's that. There's also the fact that we campaigned alongside some cinema workers who've been campaigning for trade union recognition, and they got it. And it has been really great that in the time we've been working with them, they've won trade union recognition from the management, which is really...
That is brilliant.
It's thrilling,
that seems
actually.
to be one thing that's been completely eroded. The unions and union, you know, that you're not allowed to join a union. It's not a right anymore.
Well, it is a right, but there are so many conditions that are attached to it, and you have to go through so many processes. And actually, I always do this when people say to me, because, you know, I travel up and down the country, and you often get people going, these migrants, they come over here, they do all this. They always take the cheap jobs and undercut the price. And I always say, are you in a union? Because that's the thing that pushes the price of that's the thing that pushes wages up. Yeah. So unless you're fighting for it.
Yeah. But it's almost like being in a union has become a strange, stigmatised thing.
Well,
they managed to push the whole thing.
Yes and no.
It becomes slightly weird.
Yes and no, because there's, you know, having had Bob Crow die recently, the one thing you do know is he put the fear of God into them. Yeah. And that's what he did. And Ken Livingstone actually came up with this great quote when he just said, basically, if you want to know what legacy Bob Crow left, London Underground workers are the only workers in London with decent wages.
Right, but Bob's gone.
Well, I think there will be other people who will come forward.
Hopefully.
Yeah. So those things are really exciting.
Yeah, and I also wanted to ask you about the Ceilidh band in the Google offices. That's intriguing.
Yeah. It was because, as you know, Ireland is a no to low tax state for corporations, and you know, and lots of places. You know, Jersey is the same thing. We're doing a gig over in Jersey soon, and I'm actually mounting a small scale invasion. So we've got that going up. The City of London is actually classified as a tax haven because of its treatment of non-domiciles and the tax laws there. Yeah. So lots of places have these little bolt holes where companies can go to. I think most people think if you work in a place, you pay your tax in the place you work. You don't structure it so that you pay... They've got a situation in Ireland where they've got one company. They've told America one thing and Ireland another thing, and they haven't paid tax on billions to either place. And so... as protest to that, we decided that the Apple store in Regent Street somehow had to be in Ireland because of the tax law. So we went in to celebrate its Irishness. And we took a Ceilidh band.
That's why the J. All right.
So that's why we had the Ceilidh band to celebrate it. The musicians were very funny. Because we rehearsed. We were trying to find a nearby place. You've got 25 people, musicians, people all going to wave flags and song sheets and hand out things. And various people got various tasks. And we rehearsed it in the John Lewis Cafe in Oxford Street on the 5th floor, and the staff were so lovely. We're up there, 25 of us, there's a Ceilidh fiddle band going on. And what was great was that we finished the rehearsal and the staff applauded before we went down and did it.
That's brilliant. When you start doing stuff like that, do you ever get nervous just before, or is it something you've got used to, or? No,
you never quite get used to it. It's because you.
Well, what was tell me about the first time doing like something like that?
Oh man, the first time we did anything like that, there was there's two things that come to mind. One is I chased a Tory. This was the first time we filmed anything like this. He was in a double-decker bus. It was during the European elections. And his name was Lord Bethel. He was this great big fella. He was also a Tory, Conservative for Europe, sensible, you know. And he was driving round Harrow. And we hired a little minivan and just followed him with a megaphone heckling. So he would go, vote Tory, and we would just follow up about, vote for rich landowners to control your interests. And he would go, vote Tory, vote for large lords, vote for large lords, you know, all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And they called the police, and the police just went, well, democracy, sir.
Really?
But all of us it was the first time we'd ever done anything like that. You know, so it was quite exciting. And that was back in 92, 3.
That far back?
Yeah. And that was quite fun. The other one we did was, I remember when Michael Heseltine and Lang were going to privatise the post office. This is when they first started the thing. They were going to do it by putting out business mail to tender, and which they've gone ahead and done subsequently. But we said, oh, well, you know, this could actually lead to all sorts of the destruction of the post office, which ultimately it has.
Yeah, which is integral to this fabric of society.
Absolutely.
Post offices are one of the biggest. It's happening in Ireland now.
That's a great thing. You see, a lot of the show is about these things, about communities, about what we celebrate in our community, what is of value, what isn't of value. You go to a post office, there is a social hub which actually provides these amazing financial services for you and keeps the place going. Now, when you look at that and you say the words financial services, you normally think of the Bank of England and London, but it's not. It's pensioners getting the bloody money out. It's people sending parcels to their loved ones. Do you know what I mean? It's all those kind of bits and bobs. And it becomes, I love my post office. Do you know what I mean? I walk in there with coins sometimes and the world goes, oh no. We have this lovely, relationship. And I think these places are really important. They're really, really important social centres within our high streets.
Completely.
So they were going to do this thing, and what I did, I found out the private addresses I found out Michael Heseltine's home address. I put it out on the internet. This is what we're going to do. I went around gigs, and every gig I read out the address. And what I want you to do is put his name on the junk mail. Go home, fill on junk mail stuff, and junk mail him, right? And when it says, do you mind if we pass on your information to third parties? Tick no. I don't mind. Send it to whoever you like. So we put all this stuff out, and I said to people, send me information about what you've been sending. And it was just like, oh my God. Speak Afrikaans lingua phone tapes, free condoms, free tampons, book of the month club. Someone sent him a garden hedge trimmer on a 10-day trial, right? So, and all this stuff was coming into. Now, we kind of it blew up in Edinburgh during the Edinburgh Festival, and one of the papers got hold of the story, and they asked Heseltine, and they backed down. They wouldn't, first of all, they said, oh, that's where all the pots and pans are coming from. And then they just wouldn't comment for fear that it took off.
Right.
A few years later, I was working with a young woman on a telly show who was a researcher with me, and she knew, she'd been a parliamentary researcher, and she knew some of the Tories. And she said, oh, I bumped into an old friend of mine. And she said, oh, what are you doing? He said, I'm working with Mark Tillman. I said, what's the matter? Well, I used to work with Michael Heseltine. And told the story about what happened. And she said, oh, that's very funny. No, it's not. Imagine day one. Heseltine house, sun, birds singing, postman Pat's van in the distance. 6 bags on day one. And in the middle of it was a gas bill. And he went down to the post office to try and get it stopped. And all the people he was trying to make redundant turned around and said, Can't interfere with the Queen's Royal Mail, sir.
That's fantastic. And that sort of intervention, do you feel like was it influenced, or do you feel like somebody like Michael Moore, is he a fellow traveller, or do you admire him? What do you think about what he does?
I love Michael Moore.
Yeah.
I think he's got a real heart to him. Genuinely, people slag him, but he's got real genuine heart, and he started from nothing, and I love that fact that he started in Flint, Michigan. There's an amazing book called Rivethead, and everyone should read it. Everyone should read it. It's a brilliant book. It's one of those books that's written by a person who works at the Ford Motor Company, GM Motors, in Flint, Michigan, and says the only thing worse than working at the plant is not working at the plant, right? Because those are your options. Yeah. And Michael Moore encouraged him when he used to run the local magazine, the alternative magazine in Flint. He encouraged him to be a writer, and I think Moore's got those are his tendrils, those are his places that he comes from. That he deeply and passionately cares about working people, and look, all of us are fucked up on occasion, do you know? But he's really. I saw Roger and Me, and I thought it was an amazing film when I first saw that.
Yeah, the scene where that family had been kicked out at Christmas, you just look at it and gone.
Jesus, it was. But also the fact that he didn't attack the bailiff, that the bailiff, it was really brilliant and more, because you suddenly see the bailiff who has to go and serve all the evictions as a human being who doesn't want to do this job.
I guess I wasn't going to ask this, but I'm interested. If you watch a scene like that from Roger and Me, where that family has been kicked out on Christmas Day, and you watch that and you think, that has to change, but it doesn't change. Does that not ever get you down? Or?
I think things do change. That's the point. It's just, I always tell my mates, look, it's not called the struggle for nothing. Yeah. It's a struggle, and it's a constant battle. Tony Benn had a lovely quote. He said, there is no final victory. And he's absolutely right. Yeah. I remember years ago, I did this thing down in the deep south in America. I was filming down there, and I interviewed one of the guys who was involved in the Selma Montgomery Bridge March, right, for voter registration, and he had to go and negotiate with Governor Wallace, right, and an old man now living
in the 60s.
Yeah, that's what he did. Yeah, and he's an old man now, and he's a respected, beacon in the Atlanta community, and I said to him, what advice would you give young activists who say, well, we seem to go one step forward and then two steps back, we think we've won, and then we always have to find out that they've done something else, the company put on a PR and then they do something else that's just as bad. What advice would you give? And he looked at me and just went, constant vigilance. Great advice.
Yeah, amazing. I'm also interested because, I would have bumped into you in the mid-90s gigging on the comedy circuit.
Indeed.
Yeah, and what I'm interested in, when you started out doing comedy, did you start out as a political comic?
No, I wanted to be. But actually what you want to be is when you start, I had this vision of Lenny Bruce, that I was going to be like Lenny Bruce. And all my big heroes, comedically speaking, were people who weren't really talked about in the alternative comedy scene. Do you know what I mean? I always loved Spike Milligan and the Goons, and I loved Hancock. I adored Dave Allen. I thought he was just the master. He was just incredible.
And I guess from your point of view, he also addressed issues.
Smart and subversive fella. He was really subversive, and I loved him. I really loved his stuff. But they weren't kind of, and I loved Alexi Sale. I really do love Alexi Sale, and he was kind of like the bloke who kicked open the door that all of us charged in behind. You know, that's what I feel about him. And it kind of, when you know that feeling when you get going and you're with peers, and so you look at each other. The people you're influenced by are the people you're standing next to. Yeah. And that's really exciting. And so there are people who, what was your question? I've forgotten the question.
It was the question about when you started off.
Oh no, yeah, about being
political comic.
No, you see, I wanted to be, and then I suddenly thought, I don't quite know what I'm doing, so I just went to this thing, get them to laugh. Right. And then I became obsessed with trying to do things which I thought were about taboos, to try and challenge the audience and podium. So the years and years ago, I used to do stuff about sex and sexuality and all that kind of stuff. I would talk about what a taboo is and trying to push the audience. And then I started to go back and go, okay, we can write stuff about topical material. You remember at that time, what people would do was they'd write a 20-minute set and it would last them a year.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was like a pair of shoes at school.
I'm still using that set.
You've got really good tread on that.
Our feet have never grown.
Do you know,
man.
you got proper handmade. You got a handmade set there.
Brogues.
A few stitches at the back, but otherwise it's in good nick. But this was, so people would do that, and then I thought, well, we're a bit of a lazy bunch, and I worked with Ivor Dembina, and we formed the first new material club.
Oh, okay.
And we used to charge £2 to get in, and any profit went to pay for a new speaker and a coach trip when we took the comics out to Margate for a works outing. And we started to sort of like develop and find that there was ways of trying to write topical material and political material. And then once you get good at that, you sort of go, well, I don't want to do this anymore. Why am I doing this? Because I'm just working with someone else's agenda. What I want to do is, why do I want to go and talk about what they're writing about in the Sun?
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? It's sort of, it always seemed to me you suddenly become an echo chamber.
So you want to be the primary source of what you're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So that becomes really exciting. And then when I got asked to do a telly show, I was just like, let's see what we can do.
Right.
We can either do sketches or have, you know, a lounge band on or something like that in between, you know, and pad out 15 minutes of material in a 25-minute show. Or what we can do is go, let's try and show something that isn't seen on telly too much.
Because that's interesting, because I was going to ask you, like, you use comedy to communicate, and almost ask you, is it just a hook to bring people in? But it sounds like comedy is deep in your bones.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
it's almost like as the interest in politics is as foundational as the comedy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't... The thing for me is it's not... I always think people get it slightly confused with me on occasion, because I haven't got a message I want to preach.
Yeah.
I'm going out there to find out stuff, and they get to hear of it sort of incidentally. I did a walk from, I walked the length of the Israeli barrier in Palestine.
That's right, extreme rambling.
Yeah, and it was really thrilling walking on both sides of the wall, and it's 720 odd kilometres long when it's finished. And it was, people saying, well, did you write that to do a message? What was it? And it was, no, I wanted to find out and do something that no one else had done. I wanted to discover things.
And what did you find out? I know it's hard, in a nutshell.
Well, in a nutshell, this problem is, in a nutshell, it's a really beautiful place. It's the most stunning place I've ever seen.
Right.
And literally you can pick stuff out the ground. It is so beautiful. I remember on about day 3, this bloke we were walking with just picked up wild asparagus and started to eat, and we just collected wild asparagus. And that night, his wife made this wild asparagus omelette that was just sort of, and people, you don't know how beautiful it is. The wild flowers that grow on the West Bank.
The Garden of Eden.
It is so. I mean, I remember for a year after getting back, there wasn't a day when I wouldn't think of those hills.
Right.
Really, because they were so beautiful. But I learned that actually my vision of it is my vision of it. And what you see is you see through your ideas and your experience. And I was talking to Palestinians going, yeah, it's beautiful, but it might not be here tomorrow. Yeah. You don't realise it might not be here tomorrow. And you talk to Israeli soldiers or ex-soldiers who would say, yeah, it's beautiful, but this is where I grew up. This is... To me, I remember talking to one guy going, but can't you see how beautiful this is? He was an ex-soldier. He said, I'll tell you what I see. I see a hill over there that needs defending. I see a stretch of land over here that's going to be very problematic because they, the Palestinians, are going to try and get across that wall. How am I going to deploy my men? Where am I going to put them? What's that Arab doing here? He isn't near. He said, that's how I've been brought up. That's how I've been trained to see this landscape. And actually, the landscape is this prism for people's ideologies and fears. And it was a really amazing, amazing time. Bottom line, you can empathise with every single human being suffering, but there is someone who's occupying the land, and there are people who are occupied.
There's power,
and that has to end.
And people who don't have power.
Yeah, that has to end. The occupation has to end. The wall has to come down, and it's as simple as that. And there are really brave Palestinians and Israelis who are ex-soldiers and ex-fighters working together, and they're magnificent. They're going against what is essentially an apartheid situation. It's really seeing people who are the pathfinders for their people, making the journeys that entire populations have to make. Thrilling.
Okay. Just ask finally, like, all you've seen or in your time. Tell me 3 things that would make the world better.
Well, I think...
Or 1 if you can't think of 3.
I always remember talking to an old anarchist comic called Tony Allen, who you might remember. And I remember saying to him, what would you do if you were in charge? And he went, I'd release the ravens from the Tower of London. The rest would happen.
Mark, you're coming over to Ireland to do the show. When you come to Ireland, is there any changes you make? Is it you change the Google band to a jazz band, or?
What I will be doing, there will be stuff that we will be doing in Dublin. There will be stuff kicking off in Dublin that's going to be quite exciting.
Oh, so while you're performing, you're also going to be...
There will be some actions that will taking place in Dublin, which is going to be quite exciting. Do I change the material? I don't sort of... no, I don't hold with really that idea that you chop and change to who the audience is. Because it's about what I think and what I feel. And if they don't like it, they're in the wrong place and they should just get out.
Right, okay.
Do you know what I mean? So, but obviously you want to address the situation, you want to address where you are, and you want to, you know, you want to celebrate that you're somewhere where you're not normally at. You know, that's really exciting. I really like, I love Dublin. I think it's a great old place.
That's great. Open with that line, they'll love you.
What's that?
I love Dublin. It's a great place.
No, I won't be able to do that.
But you'll be doing, so you'll do this stuff before you do the show?
Yeah, there will be stuff going on in the days around it.
And that becomes part of the show.
And that becomes part of the show. Okay. We did, I remember the other day we did this, it was great. We went and did this thing where some mates of mine, some women friends of mine, I gave them these Barbie remote control cars, you know, the little remote that was around the place. And we went up and we got them racing them outside the Saudi Arabian embassy. Just driving them up and down.
Did anybody come out?
Yeah, they did. The Saudi Arabian embassy came and shouted at us through the railings. And they shouted, check this out, if you let them drive, they will kill their children. And then turn their backs and ran away. Like, what? And that ends up in the show. That was in the show that night, you know.
That's fantastic. Mark, it was an absolute pleasure.
Really good to see you, man.
Take care.